Hey everyone, and welcome to my new podcast, So You Want to Buy a Business. My name is Kira Hamilton, and I'm a laundromat owner and SBA loan broker. This podcast is about the entrepreneurship through acquisition journey. And in each episode, I'll be speaking with an ETA entrepreneur or someone involved in the ETA process. My goal with this podcast is to provide useful insights and information into the ETA journey for people who are looking to buy a business. Because let's be honest, it can be a daunting and time-consuming process filled with a lot of stress and self-doubt. But in my experience, it can also be really exciting and rewarding and totally worth it. In this first episode, I speak with Mark Csordos, a laundromat owner and the author of the Laundromat Bible, How to Find, Buy, and Run a Successful Laundromat. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today. This is my first episode of So You Want to Buy a Business, and I'm really excited to have you as my first guest.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be the first one.
I love talking laundromats, and I know you love talking laundromats too. Before we get into the book you just published, you want to give a quick intro for listeners?
Hi, my name is Mark Csordos. I own a laundromat in New Jersey. I also authored the book, The Laundromat Bible. I've had several businesses in my life, some more successful than others. And I think that's what makes me a good entrepreneur today, because I have failed and I've learned from those. So I've taken all those lessons and put them into the laundry industry where I am now.
Well, I certainly appreciate being able to learn from both my other failures and other people's failures. I agree. I think that's part of what makes someone really successful in business is you just have to go out there and try, and you're going to mess up along the way, right? And then you learn a lot of valuable lessons.
Definitely.
So I just finished your book this week, The Laundromat Bible. I thought it was great. You cover a ton of information. It's very straightforward, very helpful. You go through everything from how to find the laundromat, how to finance, to things as specific as what do you do with lost and found items? How do you have great customer service? I think it really covered a lot of great topics. What made you want to write this book?
Well, I've read other books in the past, and when I was researching laundromats, I found it was hard to get all the information in one spot. There is a lot of good information out there, but some of it's in a YouTube, some of it's in an article, and it was hard to just find a book or one spot that took you through the whole process, and that's what I wanted to do. And I also wanted to be honest about it, because I'm not selling anything. Obviously, you can buy the book, but as far as like products or anything, so I don't really have a horse in the race, so to speak. I just want to give the next person a real idea of, look, this is how I did it. It might work for you. These are the obstacles you're going to face. Because I'm sure that you see a lot of videos, a lot of articles where laundromats are just passive income. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where people got that idea that you work 45 minutes a week, you collect quarters, and you make all this money. I don't know where the passive income for laundromats came from, but you and I both know it's not passive. Now, you can have a full-time job and own a laundromat, but the idea that I think is presented to people is that you can just make a ton of money. It's all passive. And that's just not reality. It's a business like any other business. You have to put the effort in, or you're not going to make money.
I completely agree. And I, like you, have a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn, say, hey, I saw you bought a laundromat. I'm interested in it. Can we talk? And whenever I hear someone bring up the P word, passive, I go, okay, hold on a sec. Let's talk about what it's really like to run these, because sure, there is totally a spectrum. And you talk about that in the book, from, completely self-service to you're offering wash and fold to you're offering pickup and delivery. And there's definitely different levels of involvement that owners could have. But I, after having owned a laundromat for about a year, would not call it passive income. And just to your point earlier, I guess for people who are interested in getting the book, I will definitely support your point that this is not a sales pitch. I did not feel like that when I was reading this book. I mean, you do offer laundromat consulting, and that's a great resource for people, but I didn't feel like you were selling anything. I felt like this was all just really useful information. So I want to start kind of at the beginning. In the beginning of the book, you go a little bit into your background. You talk about how you had started a mystery shopper business, which I think is super interesting. I'd like to ask you more about that later. And then you talk about getting to a really challenging period of your life and then ending up buying a laundromat. Can you talk a little bit about what was your life like before your laundromat acquisition? And then why did you end up deciding to buy a laundromat?
Well, I had started my first business at 24. Yeah, I sold that at 29. I went on to become a published author. So everything was going very well. And then I suffer from depression. Both my parents have it. It runs in many families. And for the better part of the last, I guess like 20 plus years, I've been dealing with that. So, we started a family and I worked for other people. I tried to start businesses here and there that honestly, they weren't great ideas, but they were kind of desperate attempts to get back into business and not work for somebody else. So I had a lot of, I would say, dead end management jobs. I worked for two companies that went bankrupt. So maybe I'm bad luck. I don't know. But the last job I had, I said, you know what? I'm like 49 now. This is a decent paying job. The company is growing. Maybe it's over. I had my chance at entrepreneurship. I have responsibility to my family. I'll just ride this out. And then I was hospitalized about 2 years into that job with depression. And I said, you know what? This isn't worth it. I'm working, killing myself for a company that doesn't care about me. And I had looked into laundromats before, and it just wasn't the right time for my wife and I. And I said, you know what? I'm going to jump headfirst into researching laundromats. So I got every resource I possibly could. I went on the CLA website, I went on podcasts, I read articles, and I just said, you know what? I think this is it's a great business. My wife was also 100% on board. I think it's very important to have your partner, spouse on board with you. So she loved the idea of laundromats because everybody has laundry. And I went out. I started like most people looking on buy, biz, sell, those websites. I think the website is great. The listings are usually really bad. So I had no luck with the listings. Brokers didn't get back to me. The numbers didn't match. So I really thought okay, it's not meant to be. And what I did was I gave it one last shot. And this is what I recommend people. I wrote in the book. I basically wrote to laundromats in my area. And I said, look, I'm looking to buy a laundromat, Middlesex, Monmouth County, where I live. If you are interested in selling or if you know anybody, here's my phone number. I didn't think I'd get any calls, but I figured I also had nothing to lose. It's a book of stamps, so what the heck? Well, out of 30 letters, I got like 3 responses. One wanted too much, one couldn't pull the trigger, and one is the one that I bought. So that's how I got into the laundromat.
I have to say, because, some people listening might wonder at how effective that strategy is. I had someone send me a letter not too long ago, say, hey, I'm looking to buy a laundromat. Are you selling? Ended up having a conversation with him. Seems like a great guy. And, if and when we get to the point where we're ready to sell, I'm definitely going to reach out to him first and start that conversation. Because honestly, if you already have someone who's an interested, motivated, capable buyer, I think most owners are going to at least explore that path before listing it, because it is time, effort, and money to get a broker. So I totally see that that's a viable strategy. So you find this laundromat through direct outreach. How did you go about figuring out if it was actually a good fit for you?
Well, it fit all the criteria, that I was looking for. It's literally 12 minutes from my house. So that's fantastic. Because sometimes I'm sure people ask you also, well, how far away should I live? And really the answer is it depends how much you want to be involved. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to pay other people to, have a manager and, attendance, and you really don't plan on being very involved, well, you could own a laundromat anywhere, but I want to be involved. So it was great for me to have one that close. I was familiar with the laundromat and the town. I had never used a laundromat, but the center that it's in, my wife drives past to go grocery shopping. There used to be a movie theater in there. We went there all the time. There's a hobby shop, an ice cream place. So I was extremely familiar with the area. And also, the owners that I bought it from had updated the laundromat. So it had a POS system in there, and it was already doing wash and fold. The previous owners before them were doing, and I don't really understand how you can run a business like that and how people still do it today, but they were writing everything down in a notebook.
I don't
And
get it
it's just
either.
like, guys, it's like 2024 and you're writing things down in a notebook? You're like one coffee spill away from like
Everything
all my
being gone.
notes and everything. Starbucks just ruined my business because I spilled my coffee.
And what year was this that you bought your mat?
We wound up, we closed on it in 2022.
Oh, okay. So this was in the last couple years. Okay,
Yes.
cool. So how did you finance your acquisition?
I put some money down and also owner financing. And I highly recommend to anybody out there, and it doesn't have to be a laundromat, it could be any business. Even if you have the money, ask for owner financing. Because one, you know what, you're better off using somebody else's money. But more importantly to me, it shows that they have faith in the business, that you're going to be able to pay this business off. Because if they're trying to sell you a turkey and they know it's a turkey, obviously they're going to want as much money as they can up front and never see you again. But if they say, hey, look, you know what, give me 100,000 down and we'll finance the other 100,000 over the 3 years, just pay me interest, then they're like, okay, yeah, you're going to be in business 3 years from now. I feel very confident. And that really, as the person buying the business, makes me feel a lot more comfortable because you have confidence that this business is going to be around. And that means the numbers you gave me are, legit, and everything that you've said is been on the up and up.
I totally agree. Honestly, I would be a bit skeptical of a seller who's not willing to offer some level of seller financing, even if it's 5%, and especially if you do need to finance the transaction through an SBA loan, lenders really like to see that. It's beneficial to them, it's beneficial to the borrower. I think it really indicates the sellers have a lot of faith in the transaction. I want to talk a little bit more about how people can go about finding laundromats and determining that it's the right mat to buy. And this is something you go into quite a bit of detail about in your book. I do think, don't underestimate proximity, I would say. I'm not saying buy the laundromat closest to you because it's the one closest to you, but in my experience, it is so valuable to be close. And even my husband and I live in Oakland, and my laundromat's in San Francisco. It's across a bridge, on a good day, 25 to 30 minutes, on a tough day, an hour plus. And I would say that's been one of the biggest challenges we've had is, and it doesn't happen so much anymore, but you do have times when customer puts way too much soap in and all of a sudden there's suds everywhere. You have times when someone just walks in and dumps trash all over the floor for no reason, and you want your laundromat to be functioning and clean whenever it's open, and being able to pop over as opposed to having to, call multiple employees and see who's available to come over would be so valuable to us. I would say that's probably been my biggest challenge with the laundromat is proximity. But, beyond that, what else do people need to look for? Let's say, they have done the strategy of either finding an online listing, they've managed to get in touch with a broker, or they've done, what you call the backdoor approach. They've contacted owners directly and they say, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation. What types of questions should people be asking? What information should they be looking for when evaluating if this is a good deal?
Well, I think the first thing they need to do is figure out, why do I want the laundromat, and how
Mm.
much time do I want to put into it? You know, you don't want to buy somebody else's job. And I do see a lot of listings like that where, it's a smaller laundromat. It's never going to make the profit that they talk about unless you work there as the owner. So there you're buying a job. Now, if you bought a laundromat for, let's say, 1.2 million and it does $800,000 in sales, well, then maybe that could be your full-time job and you're fine doing that. So I think, you have to ask yourself questions. Do I want one laundromat? Do I have like ideas of like, well, I want to have 3, 4, 5, in an area over time? So those are the questions, I would ask myself. And then, as far as what to look for in a laundromat, I think the first thing, I would ask, and I see a lot of listings that have very short leases. So the first question I'd ask is, how long is the lease? Because you and I both know that it's not like if you owned a pet store. Your pet store is up and you move 2 miles down the road and it's just shelving and inventory that you move, and you go into a new building. Okay, fine. It's easy. Just let people know we moved down the road. With a laundromat, you're literally bolted to the floor and you have special, plumbing and venting. So you can't just stick a laundromat anywhere. So when your lease is
Nope.
up, you're out of business. So I'll see like, wow, that seems like a really good price based on their numbers. And I scroll down, it's like, oh, well, yeah, their lease ends in 13 months. They're out of business. So they're hoping to find somebody to take that over. So the first thing I would look at, is a good lease. And then also, what is the reputation? Go online, I look at the reviews. How much work do I have to put into this place? Is it like a house? Is it like move-in ready where we just unpack and we're good to go? Or, is it a zombie mat or some place that really needs a facelift? Look, we need some new machines in here, maybe new employees with a new attitude. We have to add a POS system. It doesn't even have a website. So those are things that I would look for. And also parking. Is there a way now? Obviously, I talked to a gentleman yesterday. He's from Brooklyn. There's not a parking spot in the city. But if you're in the suburbs, you do want a place that has plenty of parking so people can just pull up, they walk in, they walk out, they come and go as they please. So those are some of the there's a lot of things, but those are some of the big things that I would look for.
Just another point on the lease, that's also really key if you are getting SBA financing. It's something that lenders are going to look at. And if the lease is up before your term, which is typically 10 years, that's not going to work. So negotiating with the seller, with the landlord is important. And I think you bring up a really great point of just how is this going to fit into your lifestyle? For some people, maybe they are interested in buying a job. Maybe for them, working at a laundromat full time is cool. Like, honestly, when I go and do some of the wash and folds or I, work at the laundromat, I like being there. It's sunny. The people are nice. I don't mind folding clothes. I'm not doing it full time, but for some people, that might be a good fit. And then
Right.
other people are really just looking for another source of income. But that is something that I bring up to a lot of people too when they talk to me about acquisitions, is I'm like, think really practically, how is it going to fit into your day-to-day life? When we first bought our laundromat, I was working in commercial real estate in San Francisco. I was a property manager, and I was initially planning to keep my job for a couple months there, just have an extra source of income. And I know some people have full-time jobs and run laundromats. I'm not saying that can't happen. But I was honestly glad that I left when we acquired it, because I was at our laundromat every day for 14 days straight, learning how things worked. I wanted to see it at different times of day. I really wanted to have a boots on the ground understanding of how this business worked. It was also my first acquisition. I'd never worked in or owned a laundromat before. So I was really glad that I took that time to do that. I will say though that owning a laundromat isn't my only source of income. If it was my only source of income, that would be a little bit of a different story. I do think a lot of people are, looking at it as one source of revenue. But, a point you bring up in the book, in which you spoke about a little bit earlier, is you do have to be really careful when you're evaluating these deals, because the seller may not be totally explicit about how much time they've spent working there. And so you talk about how should you be factoring that into the payroll costs, because if the owner's working there 15 hours a week, so talk a little bit about like how do you kind of think about that, and how would you factor those costs in?
Well, how I mean, usually the easiest way to do it is if you're fully attended, how many hours are you open? And so if you're fully attended, if you're open 81 hours, you just multiply that by minimum wage, add 10%, let's say, for all the payroll taxes and all the other things that go with it. And that'll give you an idea of what the payroll would be if you had to pay somebody else. And it might even be more than minimum wage, because some places you can't attract somebody at just, so maybe it's $15. And that way I can get a better idea of how much the owner is truly working there. If your payrolls, just for an easy number, should be 80,000, fully attended, somebody else all the time, and your payroll is only 50, then either the owner is paying under the table, which you don't want, or they're spending a lot more time there than they're letting on. So that's how I would kind of back into just how much the owner works there.
Tell me a bit about your laundromat. Is it fully attended? How often do you work there? What does your role at your mat look like?
We are fully attended. I could, in theory, not work there at all if I wanted to, but it's a smaller laundromat. So I do schedule myself some shifts. I don't always wash and fold when I'm there. A lot of times, I'll bring the laptop and I'll work on other things. But I want to be a part of it, because I want people to see that the owner is here. I can, like you said before, like boots on the ground. You get to know people. They come the same time every week, and you really build a bond with them. I'm sure you've had it too. I'm in a location where you can easily run out and do, a bunch of errands. You go to the bank and, they'll be like, hey, do you want, I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts. You want a coffee? No, I'm good. But I mean, how many places, do you have that where the customers will bring you back food, or, I'm going to McDonald's. Do you want anything? No, I'm good. So they like to see that the owner is there. So I do like to put in FaceTime, so even if it's just, I'm not being as, I don't know, productive as I would expect an attendant, because I expect them to be folding and things like that. I still think, talking up the customers and just bonding with them, that's part of my role. One of the other things that I do, and a great book that I recommend, I don't know if you've read it, but it's by Michael Gerber, The E-Myth. And I learned a
Haven't.
lot from that. I wish I had read that with my first business. But he talks about working on the business and not in the business. So working in the business would be like, the business needs me, or it wouldn't survive with the wash and fold. Like, I have to be there, you know, working on the business is, hey, I just got a new physical therapy place. We're going to start working with them. Or I called the golf course and now we're going to be doing all their towels. So I'm working on the business. Yeah, I do the schedule, the books, that type of stuff. So I do try to stay involved, and I'll go different times, to collect money and things like that. Again, so I can just see different customers at different times. So they like, and I try to be a part of the community too. members of the Chamber of Commerce, and we have the sign right by the register. We have a little library in the store. The bookcase was donated by the Chamber of Commerce. The books are all donated by the local library. So people like to see that, like, hey, yeah, you guys live in town. I went to get gas the other day, and I pulled up, and the gas station attendant's like, hey, dude, how you doing? He was coming to our laundromat when their dryer broke. So you see these people amongst the community also. They're like, I saw, at the supermarket, I saw so and so. So I think that was a long answer to your question. But yes, I do try to, I schedule myself some so that I can be there. And sometimes, somebody calls out sick, or, you have so much laundry. It's like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm folding. I'm not great, but I'll do the best I can. I'm going to help out. And that's the reality of owning a business.
And that's something, that definitely comes up with laundromats when you have wash and fold, is sometimes you just cannot anticipate when you're suddenly going to get hit with a couple 100-pound orders. Sure, you have your regular customers with their regular orders, but it has definitely happened where an attendant has texted me a picture of the laundry and they're like, I need you to come in this afternoon because I've got 300 pounds to fold and I can't do that in the next couple hours. Yeah. So you said your laundromat is fully attended, meaning you've got someone there from the time it opens to the time it closes.
Yes.
Okay. And, just for people listening, there definitely is a spectrum of how you can do that, right? Our laundromat is open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., but we're not fully attended. We have a partially remote system for people dropping off and picking up their wash and fold. But I do think there is definitely benefit to having an attendant there, right? Their wages are being paid through the wash and fold revenue, but then there's a lot of other benefits to having an attendant there. Customer service, right? Just having someone there to greet customers, to solve problems that would be a lot harder for me to solve over the phone. Sometimes it's just like, oh, when I put the clothes in, it didn't fully spin, the clothes are still wet, need to put another wash in, and having someone there to just fix those issues, keep things clean is super valuable. So I think just kind of going back to, how do you figure out if it's a good fit for you? How much time do you want to put in? How much time do you want to be there yourself? What other commitments do you have? So I think that there's maybe no perfect deal out there, but it is about finding what is right for you. And the right fit for you might not be the right fit for someone else, right?
That's when I saw a gentleman the other day, and I had mentioned I went to an activity in South Jersey near Philly, and there's a new laundromat there. I didn't actually have time to go to the laundromat, but it's like 11,000 square feet, and my
Big.
entire store is 1,500 square feet. So he's like, oh, you hear about these and you hear about the little ones and the ones in between. And I was like, you're overwhelming yourself. The right laundromat is the one that works for you. Okay. We don't even know that those 11,000 square foot ones, I mean, they're beautiful, and I'll be honest, I get a little laundromat envy. I mean, I'd love
Sure,
to have
yeah.
a playpen and, there's a coffee bar, and that's all great. I do wonder though, like from a business perspective, what is like the rent, and with all that kind of like non revenue generating space, you know? So we'll see. I mean, are those the wave of the future, or, are they just too big and cost prohibitive? But I basically told him, I said, look, we will work together to find what's right for you. How many hours you want to work, what you want to spend. Do you want to do pickup and delivery, or do you want to just, no, let somebody else do it? You just because other laundromats do it, it doesn't mean you have to do it. We have to find what works for you, because it doesn't matter what works for other people. It's not their life. It's not their money.
So far, I think we've been, for the most part, talking about kind of looking at laundromats that are already pretty well established, fairly well functioning. But you also talk about zombie mats in the book. and abandoned laundromats, which may or may not kind of be the same thing. And you do see listings for laundromats for like $30,000, $60,000, which maybe in some parts of the country would be a reasonable asking price. But I know if you see that in San Francisco, that's raising some questions for me. What advice do you have for people who are considering, especially for their first acquisition, going for, the laundromat that's been abandoned or the zombie mat? I guess first, can you define for us what a zombie mat is, and what advice do you have for people thinking about going that route?
Basically, the owner has probably given up on. There's not much care involved. A machine breaks, they don't bother to fix it. There's this little post-it on there, do not use. There's if they have an attendant, they're crusty, they're not much help. It's not very clean, and people only use it because they have no other option. The problem with taking over a zombie mat, I think it would be hard to do if it's your first laundromat. If you already know what you're doing, then you can say, okay, well, these machines, we don't need them. We're going to retool. I know how to market it. We're going to put a POS in. We're going to have a website. If it's your first laundromat, you're better off buying one that has more care behind it and there's less of a learning curve. Because a zombie mat often means you're probably going to have to retool the place. Okay, because it wouldn't be a zombie mat if it had new equipment in. Okay, somebody who dropped $250,000 on equipment, they're going to take care of it. So the machines are 25 years old. The soap dispenser doesn't work. You're lucky if you have the coin machine working. Those are tough for a newbie. I understand that the price is attractive, but at the end of the day, if you buy it for $50,000, you're probably going to put in six figures to make it a working laundromat. So you might be better off just buying one for the six figures that's already working pretty well and that you can just slide into. And one of the things that you mentioned early, and I totally agree with, is you spent your first 14 days just learning the store. And that's what I totally agree with, because I meet a lot of people and they have a lot of grand ideas. And it's like, look, before you jump headfirst in, I'm sure your ideas are brilliant. My ideas were brilliant, but just learn the store first. Okay. You're going to get a bucket with like 5 pounds of keys. Half of the keys don't even exist anymore, the machines. Just
Yep.
learn, like, okay, this opens that. I mean, yes, the other owner might transition with you for some. My particular owner didn't, and that was fine. I didn't really have a lot of, it was just learning the day-to-day stuff. Like, oh, okay, how do we take in somebody's order? What buttons do we press? Where do we put it? Like, how do we note, like, okay, well, what wash and fold order are we working on next? What is this key open? What is that key open? I got a phone call at work the one day. The coin machine's not working. I'm like, oh my God. Luckily we have two. There is a backup. So we have two, and I'm thinking, oh, that sounds expensive. So I go there and I realize when I open it up, I did the change. I forgot to turn the machine back on.
That's an
Something
important
as
part.
simple as that.
Yeah.
Then I got another call another day. The coin machine's not working again. I'm like, oh, okay. The only thing I know how to do is to turn it on and off. Let me go see if I forgot. It is on. Now I don't know what to do. I call the number of whoever serviced it last, and they're like, did you reset it? I'm like, I don't know how. She's like, there's a little red button right next to the hopper. If you press that, it should be fine. Well, you know what? I've never had a problem since. It's happened once or twice where you press the little red button. I've never had it serviced. But these are all the little things that you don't know, that you need to spend some time in your store to, like, oh, okay. So now when I get like one of those texts, I'm like, okay, I probably know what it is. I'll be there in a little while. It's not a big issue. But in the beginning, you don't know this stuff. I had one customer, I'll tell you the one last embarrassing story. probably my second day alone, the lady, puts her money in, presses start. She's like, "There's no water coming out," and another guy goes, "Yeah, there's no water coming out of mine either."
Nightmare for a
And
laundromat owner.
I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know these machines. I bought it a week
Yeah.
ago. Don't ask me these things. And long story short, they turned the water off because it was in December. They didn't want the pipes to freeze. I don't even know if you really have to do that, but I forgot to turn the water on. So it's things as simple as that. So before you start having like your fleet of trucks for pickup and delivery, just make sure you know what button works, what key works where, to turn the water back on before you jump headfirst into everything else.
Mark, probably my favorite line from your book is early on, and I feel like it kind of sums up maybe the whole book and laundromats in general. You say, it's not hard, but it's not that easy. And I was like, that perfectly sums it up. Laundromats are not terribly complicated, but you do have to learn how to run them. I do think
Right.
any reasonably smart, organized person can figure it out, but it's not just as simple as the owner hands you the keys and now you own a laundromat and everything's just gonna keep running totally smoothly. It's simple stuff, but it can be it's like a lot of small things, right? Learning how the changer works, learning how the pickup and drop off system works, learning how the machines work, learning how often you have to empty the coins, how much detergent do you need? How do you fold clothes nicely, right? Like it's not terribly complicated. And I don't think you need to have owned a business before to run a laundromat well, but you do need to put in the time in the beginning to really learn the system and the basics before you start doing fancy stuff, right? Um,
Just because you offer, I mean, just because you offer wash and fold doesn't mean like everybody just suddenly shows up. I mean, you have to go out there and promote the business, promote the service. Uh, you know, I contact a lot of local businesses. Who does your towels? Just you go into a physical therapist. You go, who does your towels? You know, and if they're like, well, we got a machine in the back or something like that, I'll go to the person sitting at the desk. Hey, do you like doing laundry? Because I'm only a mile down the road. You can bring your stuff.
I'll do it
So
for you.
yes, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not just like like that old. It used to be like an info commercial. Set it and forget it. Which like there was like a roaster. You set it, you forget it, that type of thing. It's not like that. I mean, it's still a business. You pay probably a couple $100,000 for it, if not more. It does several $100,000 in sales, and just like any other business, you have to manage it.
You talk about in your book 16 different recommendations you have for how to market your laundromat. And I think most of them apply to both, the self-serve component and wash and fold. Can you talk about maybe your top few of those recommendations that have been most successful for you?
The top ones I would say are all the guerrilla marketing. I know a lot of people in 2024, they want to go right to paid ads. One of the things that I found, I don't know if you found the same thing, a lot of people don't know pickup and delivery is a thing. So they don't even know to like Google pickup and delivery because they don't know it exists. So what I try to do is to go out, like I said, join the chamber, be involved in town type events. There's a Matawan Day and Aberdeen Day. I kind of border like these two small towns. They both have their own day. Well, we got a table at each one. We gave out candy. We had like a laundry basket full of laundry and then a very nice folded bag of laundry. And we said we turned this into this. So
Oh,
you could get the
nice.
visual. I use door hangers. I literally knock on doors, like I said, to businesses. I've gotten business just that way. Like, who does your laundry? Are you happy with them? A lot of times they're not, but they're not going to take the effort to find somebody new. But if somebody shows up, sure. So I'll talk to anybody also about laundry. If I'm at the supermarket, I'll hit up, I'll start talking to the person behind me. So a lot of it is, like you said, it's word of mouth. And, just because one of the great things about a laundromat is I don't have to conquer all of New Jersey. I know you're in California, you think Jersey's like really tiny, but even tip to tip, it's like a 3 hour drive. Okay, so, there's some geography there. All I have to do really is conquer Matawan, Aberdeen, and a little circle like around it. Okay, so these guerrilla marketing tactics, the door hangers, the flyers, community events, you're going to see the people that are your customers. So I found that those are the best, because I've heard some horror stories from other laundromat owners where they've dropped large amounts of money, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. I mean, they have bigger laundromats on the Google ads, and they just haven't really hit. So.
Yeah, I'll say in my experience, I've tried a number of different tactics and I haven't gone that hard at the Google ads route, but there was a time when I was paying for Google ads and then time when I stopped. I didn't notice any meaningful difference in the amount of wash and fold customers I was getting. And the number one thing that people say when I ask, how'd you hear about us, is Yelp. We bought the business in part because it already had great reviews and, we've continued to build those, but it was a lot due to the work of the previous owners. And I know when I'm looking for a service, I go to Yelp and I see who has the best rating, who has the best reviews. And that's not something you have to pay for. So just asking customers, hey, would you be willing to write us a review, is really great way to advertise. And I think too, once you start getting into Google ads, you're competing with much larger businesses at that point. You might not be able to beat them on the Google ad spend, but those businesses might not be going to, a town day like you're talking about, or the Chamber of Commerce, or just like getting to know people in the neighborhood. There's something else I wanted to, oh, go ahead.
But also have to know what you're doing. You don't use like the right, like if you just use like laundromat, and not like really specific targeted wording, and I don't honestly know how to do it. I mean, I'd have to hire somebody to do it better for me. But I know that if you just use more generic terms, a lot of people are going to hit on you that are not your customers. I don't need somebody in Atlantic City, which is an hour and a half away, hitting on me because I paid for the word laundromat. That doesn't help me. I need people in a 3 or 4 really targeted area around me. Otherwise, it's a waste of money.
I totally agree. I remembered what I was going to come back to, pickup and delivery. I didn't know about laundry pickup and delivery before I bought a laundromat. And I'm a millennial. I know how to use the internet, right? And I had never heard of that. I didn't know DoorDash would come and get your laundry and then bring it back. So, and a lot of people that, I talked to on the phone, they're asking about wash and fold service. And I mentioned the pickup and delivery and they haven't heard of it or they didn't realize that we offered it. So I agree. There's definitely some customer education to be had there. And you talk about setting up a pickup and delivery system in your book. I will say we use Sense, which integrates with DoorDash and Uber for pickup and delivery. I think most of the time it works well. I would say with commercial clients, it can be more challenging. But you kind of talk about, you mentioned that in the book, and I think it's definitely true that, using services like Uber and DoorDash, it opens up more hours for you. I think it might make scheduling easier, but then it's not your own employee going and picking up the laundry, right? You don't know who's going to do it, exactly how they're going to interact with the customer. Sometimes the drivers may have limited English skills. It's hard to communicate with the customer. So I think there's pros and cons. Can you talk a little bit about how your pickup and delivery system works?
Well, I do think it's the Uber, the gig pickups. They're good, like if you want to test the waters, just to see, let's say you have a full-time job. Like I tell people, you don't have to do like morning and evening pickups like 5-6 days a week. Now you'll see a lot of the bigger companies do that, but they've been doing it for 8, 9, 10 years. So they have, yes, they have drivers, they have trucks. If you're just starting out or you're small, like you could do Monday, Wednesday, Friday if that works for you. I think most people, if you pick it up Monday and say, I'm going to bring your laundry back Wednesday, they're going to be fine with that. I mean, they're not giving you their last pair of underwear, like, look, I really need this cleaned. They're okay with that. So you can kind of start whatever way you want to do it. And using these outside services lets you kind of dip your toe in the water and see, before you maybe invest in a truck or you take time off from work to cover the route, to see just how much potential there is out there for you. My one concern with using them is many times, as you know, you don't even see the customer. They just leave it outside. You grab the bag, you leave the bag there. As long as it's nice weather, you leave the bag there, and you never see who the person is. I worry about the customer that like greets the person and says, "Oh, I forgot to write in the system. Can you bleach all the whites?" Are they going to, if it's your own person, it's going to get done. If it's an Uber driver, are they going to remember? Are they going to care? It's 50-50, maybe. Maybe it's not even that high. They're just, look, here's your laundry. They hit the button. Please leave me a good review. And they're going to pick up the next person. Are they going to remember to tell, because for that person giving you their laundry, that Uber driver represents you. So they told the person, now you didn't do what I asked. So it's hard to say, oh, well, it's a third party and he messed it up. And it's like, I don't care. I paid you full price to get it right. I don't care I don't care if Santa Claus picks up the laundry. You charged me $2 a pound, just throwing out a number. That's what I expect. So that's the only thing that worries me. If they how they treat the customer, because then I don't know them. I don't know what's going to happen when they interact.
I think that's such a good point. So, how does your system work? Do you still do any of the pickup and delivery yourself? Do you have a dedicated driver? How many hours a week does that driver work?
We don't have a dedicated driver. I still do some of the pickups and deliveries because, again, that lets me be, associated with the store. I'll go in and then I can see, okay, well, how much laundry do we have? How are we doing? How's everything going today? Do you need change? Because, I mean, as well as you train attendants and as good as they are, sometimes they don't tell you what you need to know, like, oh yes, we're completely out of fives. Okay, well, you might be wanting to have told me that, and I could have gotten some. Or yes, we're down to our last 3 sheets of bounce. Well, why didn't somebody tell me? I would have ordered it or gotten some. So I do some of the pickups myself, but we also keep the windows small.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we have like 8 to 1 Monday through Friday. And most people don't even use Friday because then you're not going to get it back till Monday. So most of it is really Monday through Thursday, 8 to 1. And it doesn't take us, that full 5 hours, but it does give us a range, so we can start doing it at 11 if we had to, or we can start doing it at 8 if we need to.
What would you estimate in an average week is the typical amount of time you're spending working either in or on your laundromat?
Well, if you count the on time, I would say about 20 hours a week.
Okay. That seems really reasonable. What's something I've noticed since I left, my corporate job and now I own a laundromat and I broker SBA loans. I think I work a lot more than I actually did at my 9 to 5 job. But I love that. Like, I love working on my business. I love helping people buy businesses. I think that, sometimes there might be this idea, and, some people may really want this, but like you leave your typical job in order to work less. For me, that's not the dream. I actually love to work. It's just I want to do what I want to do and I want to do it for me and I want to have more control over my time. What was that like for you when you left, a typical 9 to 5 job and started working for yourself? How did you notice, like, did you notice any difference in what your life felt like?
I do feel like I work more hours now, definitely, with the consulting and having written the book and all the other things that I'm into, but I enjoy it. And the thing is, and you know how it feels, it's the personal satisfaction. When you work for somebody else, you can say, look, I see these issues, I know how to fix them, I have these ideas, and they usually fall on deaf ears because there's layers of management and it's like I used to feel like I have so much potential. I can give you so much more than you actually let me do. I'm like begging you to
Mm.
give me more work, and you won't. And then once I had the laundromat, and this will be the same with any business. Happens to be the laundromat. I felt like those shackles are off. I can do whatever I want, and some of the ideas don't work. I've had some of the ideas for the laundromat, and it's like, okay, it did, but at least I got to try it. And there's also that satisfaction. I mean, well, one, there's obviously the financial satisfaction because, I have certain, like you do, like monthly projections. I want, this is how much I want to hit in sales. And, when you hit those, it's like, yeah, that's because I'm driving it. And but there's also that satisfaction when, people leave you that nice review, or even if they don't leave the review. I mean, I've just had so many people come up to me, and, I had one lady is like, you know what, even if there wasn't more, even if you charged more than other laundromats, I'd still come to you. I appreciate that because you have options, and we get, I have one full-time lady, and I get so many compliments about her. I get people mad when she's not there. Like occasionally, like they'll see me and they're like, "Where's Liz?" And I'm like, "Well, by law, I have to give her 2 days off a week." I make a joke out of it. But they love her so much that they like, like she should live there. But so there's a lot of satisfaction when people just tell you, how much they love your business. And it's just like, wow, I really appreciate that because you don't usually get that satisfaction when you're working for somebody else.
I totally agree. And, that's not to say that there's anything wrong with having a job. For some people, that's a better fit. There is a lot of responsibility when you own the business yourself. You have the final say, which can be really great and rewarding. And it could also be stressful, depending on the situation. It's about what works for the life you're looking to build. Something that I think is interesting about your background, Mark, is you've both had the experience of starting a business and acquiring a business. And I'm curious to hear a little bit about, in your experience, what was, kind of the difference in starting a business versus acquiring one? And for someone who's maybe considering one versus the other, what advice would you have to give?
Well, it's much harder to start the business from nothing. One of the great things that I think that people like about the laundromats is even if you're not totally up to speed yet, the day after they hand you the keys, you already have customers. So you have that revenue coming in the door, and you have some time. Like, if you're buying a profitable business, while you have that learning curve, you have time because you're already in profit territory. You can pay the bills. When you're starting from scratch, you have to have some other income, either an income or a savings that you can live off of. And it's very hard to get the momentum started. I think of it like, trying to push this big boulder, and each day you're hardly getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
So you have to, when you're starting the business from scratch, you have to have the long-term plan. Okay. And you have to have the buy-in from both, I mean, your family, because you're not bringing any money in, and also yourself. You might have to say, look, for the next year and a half, it's not going to be a lot of fun. Because like with the consulting business, that I have, just because I put up a website doesn't mean like 50 people are giving me money tomorrow. to like, oh, teaching me about laundromats. It takes a lot of time. I spend time on podcasts, on LinkedIn, on getting people to know who I am. So it's not going to immediately pay off. I mean, that book, it took a lot of time. I thought I was going to have it done by like December 31st. It took me like 2 more months beyond that. And in the meantime, I'm not getting any revenue from it. I mean, it's not like I'm going to make a ton of money anyway from a book. But yeah, you have to allow yourself, when you're starting any type of business, whether it's a restaurant, a consulting business, you have to be honest with yourself and say, look, you're going to be working a lot of hours for no money, and the payoff is not going to be immediate. It could be a year from now, a year and a half from now. If I stick with it, the payoff could be big. But I have to realize that, in month 6, when I had a long day and I'm 6 months away from earning income, this is just a part of the journey. Now, when you buy a business, like you said, somebody came in and said, hey, would you be interested in selling? You could maybe make a profit right off the bat. So it is a lot less stressful to take a business, even if it needs some like tweaks or some help, that's already up and running, than to literally start everything from scratch. So I would just say, if you're gonna do it from scratch, have that long-term vision and have the buy-in from your family.
I totally agree. I think that's great advice. There's certainly businesses with much higher levels of complexity than laundromats, but I do think there are a lot of businesses out there where if they're already running well, if you buy it and you just don't F it up and you give yourself time to learn it, then you can figure out how to grow it. But if it's already running, you just got to kind of keep doing that, figure out the systems that are in place. I think it takes a lot more inertia to start something up from the ground, and it's a much bigger risk. So, Mark, it's not. Mark, this has been such a useful, helpful, interesting conversation. I just want to hear from you a little bit. I know you offer laundromat consulting. I think you're a great resource to people. Can you talk a little bit about how you work with folks? What type of person would really benefit from your knowledge, and how can people get in contact with you?
I want to get into the industry, who really, I want to get a laundromat, but I really don't know much. And I can't promise that you're going to wind up buying a laundromat, because I can't help what's available in your area and if it's at a good price. But I can guarantee that, when we're done working, if you don't own a laundromat, you will definitely be at 100% ready to run it. Okay. So I'm not just taking you up to the point of, okay, now you bought it, but also day one, the employees, the customer service, the marketing, the wash and fold, the pickup and delivery, everything like that. And I also offer a service, if you have a laundromat that you're like, I hear these other people, I'm not reaching that level. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. The marketing is not working, or I want to get into pickup and delivery or wash and fold, but I'm not sure how to do it. I offer a smaller program for people like that. And people can just find me, Mark Csordos. I'm always on LinkedIn, markcsordos.com. I kept it easy. That's my website, so you can reach me through that. The book is available on Amazon, so I'm easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, the book again is The Laundromat Bible, available on Amazon. I am a laundromat owner myself. I found this to be really helpful. I think it really covers everything that you need to know about looking for a laundromat, financing, and running it. Mark, thank you so much for your time. This was a really great conversation.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk later. Thanks so much for listening to this first episode of So You Want to Buy a Business. If you'd like to support this show, please subscribe through whatever platform you are listening to it or watching it. And if you want to get in contact with me, either to learn more about laundromats or to get help financing your next business acquisition, I'll include my contact information in the show notes. As I mentioned, I am an SBA loan broker. I focus on debt amounts from $250K to $10 million, and I'm happy to talk to you about your next deal. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll talk to you later.